piece is cut out. I just want to show you what I'm working with here. And this is the double dial die 1 from TLC Designs. And this is the package. I've already used the pieces. And I've put them back in the package so they stay all together. And then just to show you on the back, it gives you the instructions on how to assemble everything together. So what I have done here is I have cut 2 of everything and a couple of extra washers just to have them because I tend to lose little pieces. And so I have 2 of the arm, and I have 2 of the front piece, and then I have my card folded and waiting to assemble this all together. So the next step that I'm going to do is glue these pieces together and set them off to the side. When I go to apply my adhesive, I want to go close around the edge, but I don't want to get too close to the mechanism that's going to use the brads. Those are the holes that I'm talking about. So I'm just going to layer those together. I like using a tacky glue because it dries fast. It gives you a good tack so you can see that it's in place. I don't have to use any clips or anything to hold it, but I still have enough time and enough flexibility here to kind of move it around and make sure I have everything aligned correctly. And I'm just double checking that, and so I'm going to set that off to the side. Now I'm going to do the same with the arms. I am going to go around the outer edge, try to stay away from the little holes, and once again layer the piece on top and just slide it into place. And not only am I checking the sides, but I'm also checking the holes to make sure that I have the holes lined up and that I don't have anything blocking them as far as glue and so forth. So that is done, and I will set that aside. Taking one of the card fronts and the card itself, I'm going to use Distressed Oxide, 2 colors of blue here. I've got Faded Jean and Broken China, and I'm just going to use a cosmetic brush and blend that onto the surface to kind of create what I'm looking for is more of a textured type background. And so I'm going to get the dark blue on here and then use the lighter blue to kind of hopefully blend everything together. And depending on how much pressure I give it more around the edges to get a dark feel to the edge, but then I want to go lighter in the center to get that kind of modeling feel to it. So I'm just gonna build up layer here until I'm happy with what I've got going on. If you want, you can even use a little bit of water on the front to get those to move around some. A couple of different ways you can do that. I kind of like, I don't know, can you see the modeling I'm getting from the water? That's kind of cool. And if I go in and lift off some of that, I will get even lighter dots in those areas. So let me just hit this dark spot right here. Alright, I kind of like what's happening there. Can you see the modeling from the water? So I'm going to leave that. The reason that I have the card front here as well is because when this piece lays over the card, you can see through to the card. And so what I want to do here is just lightly give myself a guide. All I'm doing here is just really showing, yeah. See, I'm just showing myself where those marks are so that I can go in and just blend some color there as well. So, and I'll show you why I'm doing that in just a second here. I don't need a lot, but when this card lays on top, what shows through there is a similar color, so those cuts don't show up quite as much. So let me just darken in this one area, lighten some others, and I'm going to use the water technique on that as well. And then I can set that aside to dry. Off camera, I went ahead and used a heat gun to dry the surface to make sure that my card and the front panel were completely dry. And now I'm just going to glue this double layer together. So I'm just going to apply my glue here, try to stay clear of the mechanism pieces. And putting the cap back on my glue here. And then I am just going to take my finger and gently go out over that lacy part of the card with some glue. Okay. And then I am going to align the two pieces together. All right. And make sure everything is lined up correctly, especially this little teeny hole here for a brad to go through. So I'm just turning it over here on my mat to make sure I've got a good attachment. And I'm going to let that set for a minute or two to dry. I'm going to clean up my workspace, and then we're going to attach with the brads. I brought my package back so that I could follow the step-by-step instructions over here on this side of the panel, and it's in color, and it shows you exactly how to put everything together. I'm going to push it off to the side so I can read it a little bit. I know it's not in frame for you to see, but I will walk you through the process. So the first thing it says is to take your dial and this arm assembly, and it goes behind the dial, and you're going to hold that together with a brad. Now, the thing that I have learned about making these cards is that you don't want your brad to be so terribly tight because you want it to be able to move. So one trick I learned by watching the TLC Designs videos was to use some tweezers here and kind of just give yourself some space underneath where it's joined together here, and then you can push down the rest of the brad. So what that's doing is giving it, I don't know if you can see from the side here, what it's doing is giving me a little bit of space here, but yet still being able to push the brad down. Okay, and then you want to just check to make sure that moves, and it does. So the next step then is to take your card front and your dial and put those two, line up those holes like so, and put that brad in place. And this time I'm using a blue brad because it's the front of the card and we may see it. So I flip that over, start to move those brad pieces apart like so, and then again I'm going to do my tweezer trick here and just kind of give it a bend so that it has this kind of accessible shape. And then before I move on, I want to double check. and it's working well. Now to attach the arms. It says to attach this arm first, and so we're going to take our brad with a washer, and really the size of the washer on the front depends on the size of the art that you're going to put on top of it, or the image you're going to put on top of it. So the larger washers give you a larger surface to adhere to, and the smaller ones work well for smaller images. So we're going to put the washer and line it up with that. Stick the brad through, just so you know I'm using like a medium-sized washer. And then on the back, we flip it over, and before we close it, we want to put another washer on the back. So here I'm going to put a washer on the back, start to open the clip up, so that I have enough to work with, and then I'm going to do that tip again to put these down. And then once again, we want to check that mechanism. It feels a little tight, so I'm going to just open this up a little bit. Okay, let's see. Okay, that's sliding correctly. And then we just have the last one to do, and it's the same as this. So here we go again with a washer. And we're going to line up the holes. All right. Put our washer through, or excuse me, put the brad through the washer. These little buggers are hard to deal with when you have fingernails. And then we're going to stick a washer on the back. And bend that one again. Use our little bending technique there. Alright, and double check that it works. And it does. So the next step I'm going to do before putting it all together is I'm going to stamp a sentiment right here in this area, and I am going to use my stamping platform here. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to turn the camera off for just a second so I don't jostle you, and I'll be right back. Okay, I definitely would have knocked the camera getting this in place, but I'm using my works board, and I have my sentiment here that I'm going to stamp. Now, it's nowhere near the mechanism, so I was able to do that part first, and you can see here that this is going to stamp perfectly fine. If you were going to stamp in this area, you would want to do it first before you put that all together. So I'm just going to use some black ink here. This is Simon Says Stamps. Simon Says Stamp, I always put an S on the end, Intense Black ink. And I am just going to ink that up, stamp it down, hold it there for a second, make sure it's making good contact. And you can see that it didn't get fully stamped. And so I'm just going to ink it up again. Push a little bit harder this time. Using a stamp platform, you can go back and forth as many times as you need to get that to line up. That's the nice thing about using this. Alright, one more time here. Sorry, I balked you. Now we need to work on the bottom part here, so I'm just going to ink the bottom. It may have a little bit to do with the mechanism here starting to lift up the paper. I would think it would make better contact than worse contact. But there we go. Okay. So let me set this aside, and then we'll just finish up with all the embellishments. I'm going to walk you through stamping and cutting out one of the flowered shapes that I have here. I've already done 4 of them I need one more. So I'm just going to use my stamp block. So I'm using the lightest color first. And then I'm going to stamp this bordered outline and line that up as best I can. And then the final layer is the center, or the stamen of the flower. So ink that up with the darkest color, line it up one more time, give it a good press, and there we have it. And now I am just going to cut this whole die out. So I made sure the flower was dry, or at least drier. And now I'm going to just fussy cut around the edges. And I will speed this process up so you don't have to sit and watch me cut. Now I am using my mini maker, and I am just cutting out the leaves that I'm going to use with those flowers. So I will distress the edges of the leaves a little bit with some ink, and then I'll use those along with the flowers on the front of the card. And so there's just the third leaf running through the mini maker. And then they're done. To attach the front of the card to the front panel to the card, what I've done here is I have put it in place, and then I lightly traced around the dial with a pencil. And then I found a jar that was a similar curve and traced it, went back to the card front and marked how far over I needed to cut on both sides. So then what I'm going to do here is just cut this front panel before, or the front part of the card. I'm going to cut it off so that the dial is completely exposed and there is no card front underneath it. So the cutting here does not have to be perfect. I just gave myself a guide to go around, but I don't have to worry about it being, a perfect cut, because that dial is going to cover that up. And so now when you lift the front panel of the card up, you can see that there's no back of the card, no back of the front panel. I'm not sure I'm explaining this well. I'm getting tongue-tied. It's not exposed, so that you can just grab the dial without grabbing the front panel of the card. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, I'm going to attach this with some double-sided foam tape, and I am just going to go around the outer edge . Stay away from the mechanism, just like everything else we've been doing. I'm going to put one more little piece in here, but not too close to anything. Okay, so now this will lift up. I feel like I have a hair in there. This will lift up everything and make sure our mechanism works well. Alright, and I can just put that little extra piece on there just because I had it. It's not necessary. So now we're just gonna peel the tape and place it on the front of the card. Alright, so now I'm going to stick that to the front of the card. Okay, so there we are. Alright, and you can see here that it works just fine. Alright, so now to attach the pieces. What I'm going to use here, this is actually a butterfly sticker from the dollar store, and it came stuck to clear acetate, and so I just cut around the acetate, leaving the sticker stuck to the acetate. I didn't cut down into the stamen area. I just cut across the top, giving that a little bit more support. I don't know if you can see that there or not, but there is clear acetate right across there. And I'm using a little glue dot, and I'm going to stick that butterfly here. Then I have a smaller one, also using a foam dot, and I'm going to put him on this dial here. But when he comes down to the flowers, I actually want him like sniffing them or flying into them. So I'm going to turn him upside down and get him stuck onto the washer. There we go. Alright, I'm giving it a little bit of a firm press just to make sure not only am I sticking to the top of the brad, but if I can grab some of those, the washer underneath. Alright. And I'm going to use 3 of the foam dots to lift up 3 of the flowers. And I don't know if you can hear, I have a cricket in the background chirping away. And now I have a little cat visiting. He's also talking for attention. So I'm going to put that one right there. So 3 of these I'm going to lift up, and 2 of them I'm going to stick with double stick tape. So before I stick these down, I want to figure out where I want the double stick tape ones. So I'm going to layer that right there, and then I'm going to do a foam. Oh, got it stuck to my finger. And then another one right in here. And then I'll take the foam ones out to the side. Okay. So now the foam squares. There we go. And then I have my leaves that I've also put double stick tape on the back of, and I am just going to kind of place them in and under. I don't know if I want to go under the flower or over it. Maybe just over a little bit of it. Cover up the brad. Finished card, and so here is the mechanism, and you can see it working just fine. And that little butterfly is diving down into that flower while the other one is going to fly off. Just to show you that it works effortlessly. And there's the finished card. One more tip I'll give you is that I'm putting the card down onto the card front. You might want to double up on your foam tape just to give it a little bit more lift off the surface and giving the card mechanism more room, depending on what kind of foam tape you're using and if it doesn't have a lot of depth to it. So I found that double layer foam tape worked best. So enjoy.